Holy smokes. Look, I am so thrilled to be here today. I cannot express the emotion and the excitement that I get. First off, I love Big Red Media. Holly, Dave is phenomenal. Jeff, hi Holly. Drew, what a great crew. So fascinating to see how they've grown and how this whole organization has evolved. And it's got to be the most organized event that I do. But I have to be super honest, it's the MSPs. Look around. The MSPs that are here are investing in themselves. Raj is sitting up front here. How's it going, Raj? We had a great conversation, and I love the conversations that we have, right? We get to talk about our successes and where we're going with our successes and how to manage them. But we also talk about our struggles. Are there struggles in this industry? Right? It's a tough industry. I'm going to talk about some of those struggles right away. First, I want to tell you a story because I'm going to build on it throughout my presentation. In 2014, I was merging my MSP with another MSP. And we went to Boston for an event. And you know what it's like? I know you know what it's like. When you started your MSP, or you made some big change in your life, and you get excited and you start to think about the possibilities, and you imagine the growth. Sure, there's going to be challenges, but the success that you're picturing in the end just gets that adrenaline going. It's what drives you, right? It's what gets us up in the morning. Oh, by the way, throughout my presentation, I'm going to say us and we. I'm not talking about Malwarebytes. When I sold my MSP, I had no idea I was going to work for the vendor side. So I still firmly wear my MSP hat. So when I say we, I'm talking about us. If I'm talking about Malwarebytes, I'll let you know. But anyways, so you know how that works, right? You know how to like to have that vision and to want to grow it. And so that's the state of mind I was in when we were in Boston at this conference. You know what squashes a really good feeling like that? A call from the CEO of your biggest client telling you they have ransomware. Ugh. First off, how embarrassing that the CEO had to tell me that they had ransomware. We had no eyes on it. Luckily, in 2014, ransomware had been around for a couple of years, but you weren't hearing about it nearly like you are now. Luckily, there wasn't data exfiltration back then, but we had a big, big problem. And of course, just like most things that go wrong, happens at the exact wrong time. This was a worldwide winter clothing manufacturer putting their catalog together for their resellers in the fall time. It was online, print. They had 13 terabytes of data that they were working with. 2014, and it's a lot of data now, but in 2014, that was a massive amount of data. So we sprung into action, figured out the root endpoint that was spreading it. We killed it. Luckily, we had a phenomenal backup and disaster recovery system. We got them back online. The following week, we had a meeting, as you can well imagine, with the CEO, his leadership, the decision makers, and we sat down and we talked about the infection. We talked about how it could happen. And we had found through our investigation, it came in through a phishing email. My first revelation was around the fact that they had to tell us they were infected. Here's my second revelation. In front of his staff, the CEO says, oh, a phishing email. Phishing emails are like IQ tests, and that employee failed an IQ test. Oh, are you kidding me? And then I realized we failed. We failed by not communicating properly, not only to that CEO, but to all the staff, what they should and shouldn't be doing. But it's tough, right? All right. I'm going to skip past me. You've heard enough about me. This is my favorite quote by Winston Churchill. Continuous effort. Right? We need that continuous effort. The environment changes too fast. Strength, not strength or intelligence, good thing, because I'm rarely the smartest person in the room, is the key to unlocking our potential. We can't help it in this industry, can we? Well, if you can, but you're going to be in big trouble if you do. You heard in my introduction what I used to do as a moonlighting job. That's me right there in the picture. In the rodeo industry, my family is huge into rodeo. We have a saying, It's not if you get hurt, it's when and how bad. I have 100% stolen that line, and I use it to talk about cybersecurity all the time. It's not if you get impacted, it's when and it's how bad. And no wonder. I talked about the challenges. How many MSPs, how many of you have been doing this for more than 12 years? Right? It used to be simple. When I started my MSP, it was antivirus, such as it was back then, a firewall, like let's be honest, with a small business, it was a glorified router, and that was about it. You open some ports and close some ports, and away you went. We dealt with business growth. We dealt with tickets and projects. But now, I challenge you to walk out those doors, not right now, after I'm done. Walk out those doors and start to look at the vendors out there. How many of those vendors were there 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago? Look, I quickly threw up this list to fill up this page. I could have filled up 2 more pages. This is our industry today, and what are we seeing? We're seeing a pivot. Some good news, right? We're seeing a pivot when it comes to vendors. We're seeing a pivot where they begin to offer not just a product, not where you're over here and you look for a product to serve a need, you go through the sales process, then you figure out how to speak to the ROI for your client. But now, with this explosion of complexity, vendors are pivoting towards services, right? There's NOC services, there's SOC services, outsourced help desk. And it leads us towards the solutions. It leads us towards having those answers in a world where the growth is explosive, as I mentioned. So what are the answers? What's a defensible answer? I'll tell you what a defensible answer is. So I saw some hands go up when Dave asked if anybody had kids. Anybody raise a teenager or has raised a teenager? Right? Me too. My daughter's name is Talon. She asked me one time, she says, Dad, am I adopted? I said, no, but it's still early. No, she's awesome. She's older now. She's 28. She has a son of her own. But teenagers are funny. It's just a funny stage in life, right? And I can remember, tell me if this sounds familiar. You're going to run some errands. You're going to step out of the house. You ask your teenager to do something, like do the dishes. And you go out and you run your errands. You come back and guess what? Dishes aren't done. So you say to your son or daughter, why didn't you do the dishes? And they say, well, you know, Dad, I went to do the dishes, and I opened up the cupboard, and I went to get the dishwashing soap, and I couldn't find it. So what do? You walk over to the cabinet, and you open it up. You move a dish towel that somebody put under the sink, and guess what? There it is. Now let me ask you if this rings differently. You come home, and you go to your son or daughter and say, hey, look, why didn't you do the dishes? And they say, Dad, I wanted to do the dishes. I know how hard you work so that I have a roof over my head and food in my belly. So I went to the sink, and I went to do dishes, and I opened up the cupboard, and there was no dishwashing soap. I tore everything out of underneath there, but I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, maybe they had it, maybe someone put it in the laundry room for some reason. So they go to the laundry room, and they open up the cabinets, and they tear through it, no laundry soap. Dishwashing soap. And so, but it's okay, Dad. I thought of another plan. I called Grandma up, and I said, hey, Grandma, do you got any dishwashing soap? And as coincidence would have it, she doesn't either. She was out as well. But it's okay, Dad. I called my friend who's got a driver's license. They're picking me up in 20 minutes. We're going to the store. We're going to buy some. I'm going to get those dishes done. You feel like hugging that kid or what? Yeah. Same result. Dishes still aren't done. But it was a defensible answer. Do we have the defensible answers? Do you have the, we talked, Dave, this feeds directly into what Dave was talking about. With insurance coming, with regulation coming, do we have the defensible answers? How do we get them? Is there a map to tell us what to do, where to go, where to get started? I'm so glad you asked. Anybody heard of CIS controls? Anybody using CIS controls? Fantastic. I love CIS. There's lots of frameworks out there. I love CIS controls. I'm going to tell you why, and we're going to run through a really quick example. CIS controls is a framework that lays out all the different controls you might want to use for security in 18 different categories. Under those 18 different categories are safeguards, and they speak to what you need to be securing. But it doesn't stop there. They've broken them down into IG1, IG2, and IG3. IG1 is your basic security hygiene. laid out a roadmap for you so you know what to tackle. I know what some of you are thinking, yeah, sure, Eddie. Now you've just piled 18 different controls on top of me. How am I supposed to weed through those? Better yet, how am I supposed to help my client understand why they need them? I'm glad you asked that too. You're going to be so sick and tired of hearing about CIS controls in the next 3 to 6 months because this is happening. We started last year because being a former MSP owner, I knew it was coming. So I helped Malwarebytes start mapping our product to answer each of those controls where we're applicable. This is going to be the trend. This is coming, and if you think it won't have something to do with regulation, you're mistaken. So what does it look like? How do you use it? Why do you use it? And better yet, how do you sell it? All right, real quickly, gap analysis, right? Something you do automatically right now. Whether you call it gap analysis or whether you call it a holy crap moment when you realize there's a vulnerability, you recognize a weakness in your security. So let's pick on control number 11, I believe it is. You begin to read through it and you realize, hey, you know what? This control says I need to have processes, and I need to have people monitoring. We struggled with that. My MSP, we were a Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. shop. We didn't have 24/7. Certainly not in the beginning. We did later on, but in the beginning we certainly didn't. Had we had that, well, maybe we could have stopped that infection. So if you identify that as a weakness, it's one of the controls. But here's a problem. Here's a real problem. What if you can't afford to build a 24/7 SOC and staff it with SOC analysts, assuming you can even find them? So what do? You begin to build your game plan. You begin to figure out how to answer that question. How do you answer that vulnerability? So in this case, an answer might be MDR, Managed Detection Response. Managed Detection Response, for those that aren't using or don't know, it's a service offered by a ton of security vendors, like Malwarebytes, that wraps around their endpoint detection and provides that 24/7 monitoring and security SOC analysts, MDR analysts, to help you respond and remediate. Okay, here's another challenge. It's another $2.90 per endpoint, your cost. Well, you've got to make money on that. You've got to go to your client and convince them to do it. So what do? We begin to execute the scenario. We begin to, how do we, look, you know this, I'm preaching to the choir. You go to a vendor, talk about their product, they go through a sales cycle, you figure out what works for you figure out what you want, you need, you implement it, you document it. Well, here's the hard part now. You can't just take your vendor's sales cycle and apply it to your client. They will have no idea what you're talking about, and nor do they want to know that technical detail. So you need to come up with that ROI. So here's what we did. We started to add tabletop exercises to the end of our QBRs. What's a tabletop exercise? It's more of a red team type of strategy. But we would run different scenarios. We'd be in the end of our QBR, we'd say, okay, we're going to take the next 30 minutes. Let's call on your decision makers, whoever this might impact. Let's just say today, you get ransomware. Let's just say today, you have a fire in your server room. What do? Play through it. You trying to explain why you need 24/7, 365-day-a-year response remediation is a tough sell, but if you can make them feel the pain, if you can help build that empathy within them around how that's going to impact their business, it's a big, big deal. Generate a belief in security, not a policy. Boy, I wish I had about 20 more minutes. But real quick story. So I told you I'm from Texas, or Dave did. From Texas, I live in Canada now. There was a time where I was traveling a lot between Canada and the States at the end of the mask mandates. Canada had a mask mandate, the United States didn't. I go to the airport in Canada, I got a mask. This is not a political statement, by the way, this is just an observation. Put on a mask, I go to the airport, I get on the plane. Sitting on the plane, everybody's wearing masks, the plane takes off. The plane enters US airspace, what happens? Pilot comes on and says, FAA does not require you to wear a mask. 99.9% of the people rip off their masks. Is that a policy for the masks? Or was there a belief that they actually worked? It's a policy, right? Do your clients and their staff, do they do what they do because they believe in security or just because it's a policy? Do they know why it's so important not to use the same password over and over and over again? Why you need to use a password manager? Why we make them jump through the hoops of MFA? Right? If we're not inspiring them and talking to them and building empathy, we're missing out. This is how we sell cybersecurity. We have to make it relevant. We called it owning our client cybersecurity culture. I talked about the tabletop exercises, wonderful tool. You know what else we did? We had cybersecurity culture training, essentially. And what we did is I would set up times where I would actually stand in front of my clients. I'd bring them all into the same room if possible. Obviously, some of our clients are international. We had to do it virtually. But when I could come in here and I could talk to them like this, and I could show them the threats that are out there, well, here's what else I would do. Give them a little bit of cybersecurity awareness, right? But I'd also talk about what we were doing, the challenges that we faced as a cybersecurity company. I would talk about how we had to do continuous learning, that continuous movement towards making sure they were secure. And that way they began to understand that security isn't a checkbox, right? It's a journey, it's ongoing. So when I talked about EDR one year and MDR next, or a new backup system, they expected it. They almost expected me to come to them to say, hey, look, the environment's changed. Ransomware is still taking down more and more systems. It's impacting more and more companies. Like if they haven't picked up I was going to say a newspaper, but who reads those anymore? If they haven't looked at an article lately, then they're going to know about it. But it's our job to educate them. It's our job to pull on those emotional strings. And it's not about fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I never, ever believe in that. It's about preparation. We talked a lot about safety. Dave talked a lot about safety when it comes to cars. You don't put your seatbelt on with the fear that you're going to get into an accident. I mean, maybe somewhere in the back, but it's more about preparedness, right? So that's got to be our message, is around preparedness. Look, I'm going to be at the booth for the rest of today. I would love to speak to anybody if they have challenges around security, around growth, around sales. Please come see me. I have to cut this a little bit short because we're going to do something really cool. There are some tickets on your seat. I hope you hung on to it. We're going to do a draw. My lovely assistants would bring me my bucket up here. So they're on their way up. And so I would also love to connect with you on LinkedIn. If you're looking for a resource, it is not, as you can obviously tell, when I work with MSPs, when I interact with them, it's not always, in fact, almost never about our products. I do work for them. It is a path in. If you want to know some of the new things that we're doing at Malwarebytes around EDR and MDR and our MSP channel, please reach out to me. But if you want to talk about the challenges and how to overcome them, and certainly about cybersecurity culture, I'm there for you too. All right, let's do this. You gonna come up? Hold the bowl, all right. All right, I think we have more tickets in the bowl than we do out in there, so this might take a couple. Oh, it's for a PS5, did I say that already? All right. 657-068. Anybody? Right there? No? All right. Going once? Oh, okay, sure. 657-068. Sweet deal. Look at that. First one. Come on up.
I need a dollar, that's what I need. Hey, hey. Well, I need a dollar, that's what I need. Hey, hey. Said I need a dollar, that's what I need. And if I share with you my story, would you share your dollar with me?
What's your name? Tina? This is Tina, everyone. Where are you from? Who are you with, Tina?
I'm with Sugar Shot out of Los Angeles.
Sugar Shot out of Los Angeles. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Great. There you go. Right, we're going to do that now? Off stage.
And I'm looking for somebody come and help